In the middle of a war zone, what is the most powerful sound? Is it the thunder of artillery, the roar of a fighter jet, or is it something else entirely? Imagine, after weeks, months, or even years of constant chaos, everything suddenly stops. The guns fall silent. The air, once thick with smoke and fear, becomes still. That sound, the sound of silence, can be the most powerful and most fragile sound in the world. This is the world of the ceasefire. Welcome to G Fun Facts Online, where today we're diving into one of the most complex and high-stakes instruments of peacemaking. A ceasefire is far more than just a pause in the fighting. It's a tightrope walk over a canyon of chaos, a delicate dance between renewed conflict and the first light of a lasting peace. It's a testament to the sliver of hope that can exist, even in the darkest of times. But what exactly is a ceasefire? And what separates the ones that lead to peace from the ones that are shattered by the first gunshot? Let's find out. The vocabulary of peacemaking can get a little confusing. You hear terms like truce, armistice, and ceasefire thrown around, sometimes as if they all mean the same thing. But the details matter. A truce is one of the oldest terms, often referring to a very temporary, on-the-ground agreement to stop fighting, maybe to collect the wounded, or to observe a holiday. Think of it as a timeout in a very deadly game. An armistice is traditionally a more formal agreement to suspend all military operations. Historically, it was seen as the first major step towards a formal peace treaty. The armistice that ended the fighting in World War I is probably the most famous example. It didn't officially end the war, that was the Treaty of Versailles, but it stopped the shooting. The term we hear most often today, ceasefire, really came into its own with the founding of the United Nations. It was first officially used by the UN back in 1947 during a conflict in Indonesia. Today, a ceasefire is a broad term for a suspension of violence. It can be declared by just one side or agreed upon by all parties. It can be for a tiny area for a few hours to let food and medicine through, or it can be a nationwide, indefinite halt to all fighting, designed specifically to kickstart peace talks. So while they all involve a pause in violence, the scale, formality, and intention can be very different. Now, you might think a ceasefire agreement is a simple document. Okay, everybody, stop shooting at 12 o'clock. But a successful ceasefire agreement is one of the most meticulously crafted documents you can imagine. It has to be a detailed blueprint for de-escalation that leaves absolutely no room for misunderstanding, because a single misunderstanding can cost thousands of lives. Let's look at the anatomy of a strong ceasefire. First, you need clearly defined geographical markers. This isn't just a vague idea of our side and your side. We're talking about high-quality maps with precise lines of disengagement, demilitarized zones where no one is allowed to enter with weapons, and specific assembly points for troops to gather. Every meter of ground has to be accounted for to prevent disputes over territory. Second, you need a detailed timetable. A clear schedule for when the fighting stops, when troops pull back, when heavy weapons are put away. This isn't a suggestion, it's a synchronized clock that all sides must follow. Without a shared timeline, one side might think the other is dragging its feet, and that's how trust evaporates. Third, you need specific prohibitions. The agreement must state exactly what constitutes a violation. Is moving troops a violation? What about flying a surveillance drone? What kinds of weapons are banned from certain areas? You need to define the rules of this new non-violent game. This section often includes the creation of buffer zones or humanitarian corridors, which are safe passages for civilians and aid workers. Finally, and this might be the most important part, you need monitoring and verification. It's one thing to sign a piece of paper. It's another to trust that your enemy is actually following the rules. This is where impartial, third-party monitors come in. These can be UN peacekeepers in their blue helmets, observers from regional organizations, or even trained civil society groups. They act as the referees, investigating reported violations and confirming that both sides are holding up their end of the bargain. Without a trusted monitor, a ceasefire is built on sand. So you have the blueprint. But how do you get two sides who have been trying to kill each other to even sit down at the same table and sign it? The path to a ceasefire is a masterclass in high-stakes negotiation, often happening in secret locations while bombs are still falling and mistrust is at an all-time high. At the heart of this process are the mediators. These are the tireless diplomats and negotiators who facilitate the dialogue. Their job is to build confidence, to translate the demands of one side into language the other side can understand, and to find the tiny patches of common ground that can be stitched together into an agreement. The success of these talks often boils down to one critical factor: political will. The most perfectly written agreement is worthless if the leaders of the warring parties aren't genuinely committed to peace. What creates that will? Sometimes it's the sheer cost of the conflict in blood and treasure. Sometimes it's a military stalemate where both sides realize they can't win on the battlefield. And often it's intense pressure from the international community. But political will isn't just about the leaders. There's a growing understanding that for peace to last, the process has to be inclusive. This means bringing more people to the table, especially women and representatives from civil society. Think about it. Local community leaders, women's groups, they have a deep understanding of the conflict's impact. Their involvement increases the legitimacy of the agreement and ensures that the peace process has local ownership. Studies have shown that when women are involved in peace negotiations, the resulting agreement is more likely to last. In a climate of intense suspicion, you also need to build trust, step by tiny step. These are called trust-building measures. It could be something like a prisoner exchange, allowing displaced families to return to their homes, or even conducting joint patrols with soldiers from both sides in a demilitarized zone. These small actions can create the momentum needed to achieve a bigger breakthrough. History is, sadly, littered with the ghosts of failed ceasefires. They are stark reminders of how incredibly difficult this is. The multiple attempts to halt the violence in Syria, for example, have been repeatedly crushed by a toxic mix of factors: a lack of genuine political will from the government, a dizzying number of different armed groups who won't cooperate, and the competing interests of powerful foreign countries backing different sides. Similarly, the 2018 Stockholm Agreement in Yemen, which included a ceasefire for the crucial port city of Hodeidah, has struggled. It was rushed, its design had weaknesses, and the two sides walked away with completely different interpretations of what they had just signed. These failures teach us that good intentions are not enough. But there are glimmers of hope. There are successes that show us it is possible. Look at the 2016 ceasefire between the Colombian government and the FARC rebels. This wasn't just a temporary pause. It was a definitive ceasefire designed to permanently end a 50-year war, and it was part of a comprehensive peace agreement that was later approved by the Colombian people. And of course, there's the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland. Though it has faced challenges over the years, it stands as a powerful example of how a ceasefire can lay the foundation for a political settlement that transforms a society and brings a more peaceful future. The common threads in these successes are almost always the same: strong international support, a clear and comprehensive agreement that leaves no room for doubt, and a genuine, unwavering commitment from all sides to make peace a reality. Just as conflict evolves, so do the tools we use to build peace. The 21st century has brought new technologies that are changing the game for how ceasefires are monitored. Instead of relying solely on human observers on the ground, who are often in great danger, we now have new eyes in the sky and ears on the ground. Drones and high-resolution satellite imagery can provide real-time data on troop movements. They can spot a new artillery position being built or a column of tanks moving into a restricted zone. Acoustic sensors can be placed in demilitarized zones, to detect the sound of gunfire or explosions, immediately flagging a potential violation. Social media is also playing a role, with platforms being used to quickly spread information about the ceasefire terms to the public and even to track compliance through citizen reporting. But, as with any technology, it's a double-edged sword. The same drones used for monitoring can be used for surveillance and targeted attacks. Social media can be a powerful tool for peace, but it can also be a cesspool of propaganda and misinformation designed to sabotage the process. Ultimately, these high-tech tools are only as effective as the political will behind them. A satellite image of a violation means nothing if there's no robust mechanism to hold the violator accountable. Perhaps the most important evolution in peacemaking, though, isn't technological, it's human. It's the growing recognition of the vital role that ordinary people, that civil society, play in building peace from the ground up. Local communities are the ones who suffer most in a conflict, and they are often the most passionate advocates for peace. In Nepal, for instance, civil society organizations were absolutely key in monitoring the 2006 ceasefire. They created a network of citizen monitors who built trust on the ground and helped ensure the agreement held, paving the way for the end of their civil war. The inclusion of the people's voice makes peace more durable. When the guns finally fall silent, that is not the end of the story. It is the end of the first chapter. A successful ceasefire creates the space for the real work to begin. It allows humanitarian aid to finally reach starving and sick civilians. It allows refugees and displaced people to begin the long journey home. And it allows the slow, painful, and essential process of reconciliation to start. But this period is also one of maximum risk. The collapse of a ceasefire can be catastrophic, leading to a return to violence that is often even more brutal and intense than what came before. The challenge for everyone involved, the mediators, the international community, and the warring parties themselves, is to protect and nurture the fragile shoots of peace that emerge in the silence. The art of the ceasefire is not just about pausing a war. It's about creating the conditions for a future where the roar of artillery is replaced, permanently, by the quiet, steady hum of peace. It's a reminder that even in the face of the worst humanity has to offer, the hope for something better, the will to rebuild, and the search for peace endures.